Want us to strictly follow company policies? No problem. Hello everyone. First post here. On mobile and not a native English speaker. So forgive my mistakes. TLDR at the end. Hope this will satisfy your hunger of malicious compliance. This MC comes from a few years ago when I was working as an external developer for a software house. The team was great and the lead developer, let's call him Mark, was simply the best to work with. He was a very skilled developer with also the ability to easily coordinate the team's tasks. We also had a manager, John, who was also very friendly and easy to talk to. Our job was going smoothly. The company tracked the progress of the various projects in a software where John divided them in various steps. John set up these steps very broadly. Analysis, initial setup, development, release, maintenance. To avoid creating too many of them, we then needed to input the time we spent on each of these steps. If the project was missing some steps or hit the budget cap, we couldn't input our timesheets and, technically, weren't allowed to start working. Per company policy, our duty was to inform our direct superior about these issues. In this case, Mark. He then should have informed John, who finally would have to increase the cap. As the good manager that he was, John knew all these steps were a huge waste of Mark's and our time. So he allowed us to temporarily sign our timesheets locally and start or continue our work. Gather himself all of our cap increase requests together. Do all of them simultaneously. And then directly let us know we could input our timesheets in the software. Then, the company got acquired by an hedge fund. Suddenly a lot of new middle managers appeared. And John was moved to a higher position in a different department. To replace him, they hired Phil. Phil tried to present himself as the open to everyone's requests manager. But it became obvious pretty quickly that he was more a I'll stick to company policies as harder as I can guy. Probably to appeal to his ego or to some higher up. First thing he did was to completely change the project's organization. To better check the project advancement. Now in a project, every task, every little change, had its own step and budget cap. Remember that if the step was not in the software, we weren't allowed to start working on it. He then enforced our daily timesheets input. It became mandatory to input them at maximum the next day, so we could be more responsible about marking the project progress. It could have been okay if it wasn't for the fact that projects' budgets were drastically reduced. Basically, after reaching the middle of our developments, we already reached those caps and could not insert any more timesheets. When we started asking Phil about creating those steps or raising the budget caps, like we did with John, he quickly redirected us to Mark, as that was the company policy and the proper chain of command. Mark's job quickly became hell, as he basically had to spend half day asking Phil to create project steps or raise caps. We knew we were bothering Mark, and he knew we couldn't do anything else. He tried to talk to Phil about easing these policies, but without success. At the end of the month, everyone was behind with the timesheets input, and some tasks were not started at all. Phil gathered us and other teams and started his rant about how it was our fault since we required too much time to do our job and it was not acceptable. As our team leader, Mark was particularly targeted and probably missed some bonuses that he had no problem getting when John was the manager. His fault? Not letting Phil know soon enough that steps weren't available or budget caps were reached. It was enough for him. It was time to maliciously comply to company policies. He asked Phil to let us stay some minutes after the meeting to explain us how to resolve this issues. He agreed but wanted to stay in the meeting too. Mark calmly said to us, "It is imperative that you tell me, and only me, that steps are missing or caps have been reached as soon as you notice. You must send me an email with this precise subject. I'll then inform Phil. Only mail requests will be accepted. He remarked various times that the mail needed to have a specific subject format, like Project X Step Y missing, or Project X Step Y cap reached. And every time he was looking at us with a look that was saying, just do like I say. Trust me, we started doing exactly what he told us, and soon discovered why he was so confident. A few days passed, and an angry Phil stormed in our room yelling at Mark that his behavior was unacceptable and an urgent meeting with the higher UPS was scheduled in a few minutes. Mark went, and after about half an hour returned with a satisfied smile on his face. And after him a defeated Phil. He later told us that he basically set up a forwarding rule in his mailbox, which forwarded to Phil every single mail whose subjects matched the patterns above, with a predefined text like, "Dear Phil, I'd like to inform you that the team brought to my attention the fact that Project X is missing Step Y, or similar." In those few days, he submerged Phil's mailbox with our requests. Phil probably hoped that the outcome of the meeting would have went in his favor. But the higher UPS stated that no company policy was violated. Mark wasn't spamming as those were all legitimate work-related emails, and was Phil's duty to appropriately manage the situation. Also, Mark now had proof that he was immediately notifying Phil about the project's issues. So nothing could be his or our fault anymore. I stopped working for the company shortly after. But after a few months they told me that Phil was demoted and moved to another position with lesser responsibilities. TLDR. New manager came in supervising our team's work, strictly enforcing company policies about projects' timesheets input, and requesting to address budget caps, increase requests to our lead developer to respect the chain of command. Work quickly gets behind and it became our fault. Lead developer maliciously comply, requiring us to write every single problem we encounter with the project's timesheets input via mail, and automatically forwards them to the manager. He tries to involve the higher UPS, but they defend our team leader. Similar case. I worked a security gate for large agricultural manufacturing company. In a meeting, the lead supervisor of the plant said we gate guards were not to let anyone through the gates without proper signage on their vehicle. I asked, "No exceptions?" He sighed as if I was stupid and repeated my words, "Except not," as a question. A week later, guess who comes to my gate in a vehicle without proper signage? Yup, Mr. Big Shot. He asks me to let him in. I say no. He says he is late for an important meeting. I looked him right in the eye and said, "No exceptions. That is what I was told." He backed up his car and went to the main office to walk through the building to his meeting. Respect ma authority. Less than whack. Well played by Mark. He used the asshat manager's own words against him. I am surprised he was demoted. Clearly a candidate for a promotion. Then, the company got acquired by an hedge fund. Corp wanted to save money. Hires tons of middle managers to save a few dollars. I understand what hedge funds want and I don't like it. But at least I thought they were competent. But every time I hear of this hedge fund's moves, it sounds like burning much more money than before to me. Or maybe I can't see the big picture of such moves. Who knows? I am just a worker. I wonder how many times in that last meeting Mark said, as per Phil's new policy demanding ABC. He was informed of X at this time, date. And here's the proof. Basically just repeating, ramming home the point that Phil's ideas were not signed off by anyone above Phil. And they were 100% Phil's personal decision that wasn't backed up by company policy or requirements. I laughed at this. Good MC. Previous job. For a big accountant software firm that sounds like it's owned by the Inuit. Was told when doing support not to make any changes whatsoever to any client's system or data without express new high-up manager guy authorization. That manager, who thought he was a big shot, started getting dozens of emails every hour. This customer wants to change a supplier name due to a typo in the spelling. This customer needs to collate XYZ columns and wants a result. This customer wants to start a new data file for January 1st, etc. Eventually it got to the point where we couldn't do anything because the smug manager face was behind by thousands of authorizations and he eventually got sacked. I remember one friend sending like 50 emails throughout a call. This guy wants me to remote to his system. This guy wants to share his screen. This guy asked me to launch the software. This guy asked me to open XYZ data file, etc. Delicious. Developer Mick is always best Mick. Very nice. Good managers are forced to quit. Bad managers are reassigned.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.